This session, it's part of our monthly masterclasses that we're offering to all of our past and current clients. And I know that many of you have registered for the recording due to work commitments and our family commitments. So we will have that out to you within the next week or so. Okay, our masterclasses are always on the last Wednesday of the month, and our next one will be on the 25th of February. Okay, you will get a reminder closer to the time anyway. So but just so you know, we have a range of topics that we can cover. But I'd like also to leave it open to you that if there is a particular topic that you would like covered in the masterclass, please just send us an email back, and we'll see about getting that as soon as we can. Okay, so what I would like today to start with, and what's really going to be important is that we actually start and even get a sense of, look, what are we going to be talking about? And what I mean by that is that everybody has a different experience of what fear is. But before I go into that, I want to, again, this is our first time that we're able to actually present together. So this is Katrina, my wife, and also a therapist in the clinic. So a lot of you will have met Katrina. And we worked together working with the same purpose in mind, which is actually to give you all of the choices back, not just with fear, but with every other problem that people come up with. So Katrina is going to be sharing some of the topic, and just so you're not bored with me, because a lot of the time Katrina is bored with me, so she understands. Okay, so just even to start off with, what is fear, and I want to just start with the dictionary. There's so many dictionary meanings, but our descriptions of it. But even using the word dictionary, kind of showing my age, because I know you can Google it now, but I'm still locked into the past. Okay, but some of the definitions of what fear is, and it's generally in the very same vein. One is that it's an unpleasant, often strong emotion caused by anticipation or awareness of danger. Okay. Another one was an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Okay. And another one is that it's an unpleasant subjective emotional state arising in response to perceived dangers or threat. All right. And all of these are, again, they have a lot in common. And that is that it's a perceived threat. And what we can learn from actually any experience is that if there isn't a real threat, well, then we know that we don't need to respond in the same paralyzed way as we would if there was a real threat. Okay, and for a lot of people, that the fear is actually what is creating the problem, because even though there isn't a real threat, they're reacting and responding as if it is almost like a life or death situation. Okay, now it's not realistic because obviously they know that there isn't a real threat, but this fear is there, and it is very, very real for them. And that's what I want to go through this evening, so that you get to understand, look, what is going on, why it's there, and again, how you can actually get just get rid of it, eliminate it, or just understand it. Either way, the fear won't have any power over you. Okay, because fear, it has its roots in our belief that we're not able to cope with the consequences of an event or a situation that's going to happen. All right, but even though that's where its root is, we're looking at dealing with this on an ongoing basis, on a daily basis, because we still have to live our lives, but also with the confidence, with the certainty that you're going to be able to deal with whatever dangers are out there. Because as adults, that is what we do. Because we're learning from the process, from our past experiences, so that we get to live without the limitations that sometimes fear gives us. Okay, so this masterclass, I suppose, then it's not about fear itself. It's about removing the misunderstanding that made fear feel so powerful. Okay, just removing the misunderstanding and being able to again, just being able to look, to analyze, to assess what's going on so that we can make a logical decision and a logical assessment that better to decide whether it's actually dangerous or not. Because fear is not a thing. It is an experience. And when we get to understand what it really is, its effect on us then will reduce or disappear completely. And that is what I want for all of you tonight. So if there's any lingering fears in your life, please let us know. Send us an email, ring us, so that you no longer need to struggle with them. And it's important that you understand that fear, it's not unusual, although it's not normal. It is not natural for us as humans, because fear is not what we think it is. Fear is not the danger. Fear is just a sensation that your body experiences. And that is because when we focus on something, when we see a situation, okay, while our mind, before even our conscious mind kicks in, our imagination now goes into creating what it is. And it's going to be it's a protective response, and it's based on our past experiences. And what happens is that because our imagination can create something that's not real, our body then goes into that protective response. And then our logical mind kicks in, okay, to be able to assess it. But unfortunately, we've been conditioned to ignore what our logical mind can do. And we go straight into actually believing that what our imagination has created is what's real. So fear, the response to fear, that sensation of fear, is a protective biological response. It's not a prediction. It's not truth. It's not reality. So it's unnecessary. It's also very unwanted and very changeable. Because in the same way that for people who watch horror films, they know consciously that it's not real. They know it's not real. But still, it can frighten the life out of them. And it's only because as they're watching it, their imagination creates that film as if it's real. As if you're actually in it. But not just picking on horror films. In the very same way, a sad film, for some people, can have them in tears, even though it's not real. That whatever you're focused on, your imagination is going to create almost like a film. And I'll be covering that in a little while. Okay? Because as you know, even sometimes when we were children, okay, or after watching something that's scary, that when you go to bed, the lights are out and you hear the creaky floorboards. That straight away, for some of us, that we go into the monster's coming up, or the killer is going to get me. And it keeps us awake. When all it is actually just the floorboards expanding with the heat or whatever. But in the same way, exams. When we're expecting exams, again, we get into this fear. This sensation of fear. We see exams as being a bad thing, even though exams are an opportunity for you to find out where you are in relation to what's expected. It gives us a chance to be able to analyze and then to put more work into a particular area or to prioritize some other things. The same with any tests, whether they're medical or otherwise. Interviews the same. That all we're doing is our imagination is creating a scenario, creating a situation where, well, for a lot of the time, we have no idea. We can't predict the future. And in that uncertainty, without all the information, our imagination is going to join the dots. It's going to fill in the gaps. And unfortunately, like this experience of fear, it's almost accepted as being okay. It's expected to be that normal, when actually it's not. And the reason we know it's not normal is because of the discomfort that it creates, that it causes. Because all it is a primitive, it's a protective instinct to keep us from danger by getting our attention. That's all. And the natural logical process is that while if it predict or if it perceives a threat, now it creates this sensation to get our attention so that we can then let it go up to our logical brain. And part of that logic is to analyze and then to assess. And if it then was able to decide that it is danger, then it acts appropriately. If it's not danger, then it just deletes it and it moves on. And this happens quickly. But unfortunately, we don't allow it to go into that assessment. And only because of, well, the way we've been conditioned. It's what we expect. And we have the opportunity to analyze and to assess all of these things. And so that we can act appropriately. Because if we don't analyze, then that imagination will create the monsters or the bad spectrum that can result. And this is what creates our typical response. Because for most things in our lives, we will address them properly. We will look and we say, doesn't make sense. And then we just deal with them. And it's only in a few small areas that we don't do that. And it's almost like we lapse back into a state of powerlessness and helplessness when we don't need to. Because even as adults, we're not powerless. We're not helpless. And that's why it paralyzes us, because in that powerless state, well, all we can do is freeze. And when we have that sensation of fear, well, does it mean that danger is actually present? And obviously not. Because that sensation only means that your instinct, your own mind, believes that there's something that may be a threat, not that it is. And this is why the perception of a threat needs to be analyzed. It needs to be logically assessed and then a decision made on it. But without knowing, when there is that uncertainty, as I said, our mind creates something that is tangible. It needs to focus. It needs something that it can focus on. Which is why sometimes when we're looking at shadows, that we can create shapes. Things that make sense to us, but nobody else can see. And as an example, something that probably we all have experienced, and that is that when you listen to the radio, when there's a presenter on that you've never seen before, your mind it can't focus on that. So it creates an image of what that presenter looks like. It creates the image. It even goes to the point where you even know what they look, what they're wearing, how tall they are, whether they have glasses, what color their hair is, if they have hair. And that is to the point where it's just almost as if they're standing there in front of you. Now, when you find out what they do look like, and for most people, they never look the way they sound. And what happens then is that your mind is then going to take their real image and superimpose it back onto what I had created, to the point then that you can't even remember what you thought they looked like in the first place. That's just the way the mind works. And it's there again to keep everything working smoothly. So, and people do wonder, well, if it's not proof that there's danger there, well, what is it? And it's just that your mind is just protecting the familiarity. It's protecting you, protecting the stability by filling in those blank spaces. And that's all uncertainty does. It leaves a void. It leaves that space. And your mind will naturally try to fill in. And because our imagination is such a powerful resource, it's a creative part of our own logic. And it helps in planning, in goal setting, in problem solving, creating ideas, innovation. It is the most creative thing we have. And its purpose is to create, really for us, it's to create what we focus on. Okay, and it will do that without hesitation, which is why when you're in work, well, then you can focus and it will create, well, all the ideas or all solutions or answers, or it just accesses what you do know about it. But if we focus on doom and gloom, it will create then like a movie of every similar past experience. But it doesn't have to be something real. It could be a dream, could be a film that you watched or something that you heard. And it will create it as if it's real. Which is why when we find ourselves in those doom and gloom scenarios, it just seems like it just keeps growing. It keeps creating, because the more we see it, the more we focus on it, and the more our imagination creates what's similar. But in the same way, if on the other hand, we were to focus on the other end of the spectrum, if we were to focus on what success and fulfillment can be like, what the happiness, what the calmness, even your best version, it will create a movie depicting that. Now, neither is real. The doom and gloom is not real. The best case scenario is not real. But the feelings that you feel are. And then we respond or react based on our understanding of what actually is real. Because our body will react, as I said before, the conscious thought kicks in. Okay. Now, fear doesn't have a thinking ability. It is protective, and that's all. It doesn't have an ability to interject or to analyze. It just creates. It is not an intelligent element. But it does use our past memories to protect us, not our present awareness. And the realization that we have survived our life up to now proves that no fear was ever bigger than us, no matter how we responded or reacted to it. That we dealt with everything in our past in a way that we can learn from. For example, like when we had these monsters under our bed when we were children, or in the wardrobe. Our first day in school, the fear or the sensations that we had there, or even now meeting new people, doing exams, interviews, presentations. That we have survived everything. Now, when you realize that you have survived everything, well, what does that say about you? What does that say about your resourcefulness, your tenacity, your resilience? And those sensations of fear, they reflect our own insecurities, our own uncertainties, so that we can analyze them, we can assess them, and then we can address them so that they're no longer an issue. Unfortunately, we were conditioned just to run away and hide, to fear them, to try and to hide away from them. And what I want you to know is that, well, you don't need to do that anymore, because when that sensation of fear is there, now I would love for you to understand that it's just those insecurities, the uncertainties, those voids of uncertainty. Because when you get to analyze them, when you get to assess them, and if you can't do it yourself, hey, give us a ring and we'll show you how. We'll guide you through it so that once you see them as they really are, now you can just address them. And that addressing just becomes knowledge. It becomes what's real. And that's why they're no longer going to be an issue. I'll just invite Katrina now to come on, because again, realizing that I don't want to bore you to death. Okay.
Hi, everybody. So continuing on from what Fiachra has just said, what role does memory play in fear? Fear is often a replayed memory reacting to a new moment, as if it were the same as the old one you have experienced in the past. It replays it as if you haven't learned anything since the previous time. That is why it feels like a loop. You feel like you're in a loop, a cycle, like on a hamster wheel, a pattern, because we are repeating the same response without applying the logic of what we've learned from the last time it happened. Because we naturally go back unless we do some changing. So why does fear feel overwhelming? Maybe because we mistake the physical sensation, which is your body bracing itself for action, for a real physical threat, even though there is none present. So just getting used to relaxing the mind so you don't feel so overwhelmed, living in the moment so that you can enjoy each task that you're doing at the time. And not dwelling on fear as this is going to happen next week or the week after. There's no point in worrying about what might happen in the future when it's so far away. Live in the moment, enjoy today, knowing that you're intelligent enough to work it out as you get closer to the time. Is fear, is it a sensation of fear? Is it an instruction? Sensations of fear is information. Remember that. Information that still requires interpretation. If we use logic to interpret it, the response will be realistic and reasonable. If we ignore logic, we get stuck into that rabbit hole. We may stay there until we realize that it's not real. This is why it feels like the same loop and repeating the same thing over and over. So learning is needed to change our habits and our behaviors around the new experience of the same habit so that we are growing and making sense of our new reality. So that we learn from the past, we focus on now, and we look forward to the future. So when we stop running away from fear, the body will settle because it no longer needs to shout to be heard, to keep repeating it, to keep reminding us. Our logical mind can analyze and access it and determine whether it is real and to be remembered or to be deleted because it makes no sense anymore to keep repeating the same fear. Maybe we had a fear since we're 5 or 10 or 15, but now we're 20, 30 or 40 or older. So it makes sense now to make some changes, habits, behaviors, changes, letting go of things, deleting them, so that we now have a new reality, time to decide how we want to feel. Some people think fear is trying to harm us. Not really. Fear is trying to help us. But it's often using outdated data, almost pleading with us to apply logic or learn or get to understand it in a better way. We have been conditioned since birth to believe that we have to have fear. It's a learned behavior, watching other people around you. But that's not exactly true in every family. We can look forward with excitement and courage to achieve our goals in a calmer and more enjoyable way, and learn as we go, and replace old emotions to new emotions and excitement and enjoy new things. If it was true, why doesn't everybody have the same fear? Fear and understanding cannot exist together. We can't be happy and sad at the same time. It is said that we are born with two fears, but these are instinctive protective responses. We learn fear from our childhood. Reading fairy stories, Red Riding Hood, monsters, dragons. We learn to have fear of strangers. Don't go off with strangers. Don't talk to strangers. And all these fear can control us. And in the same way we were told about the bearded man at Christmas time, we had a happy memory for most of us. We stopped believing in him when we got to a certain age because it stopped making sense. Same with the tooth fairy or the Easter bunny. But we weren't specifically told that we didn't need to believe in the stories and the monsters. We just learned as we went along. And some of us have kept those old memories and those old feelings and emotional attachments to certain characters. We still carry around those fears, even though they do not make sense now. Because sometimes when we go to do something, the old fears come back and we're living in the old reality rather than the reality of now. And become deeply ingrained so that we don't link our fears now with those times in early childhood. We just remember a fear. So hopefully from tonight, you will be able to understand fear more completely. And many people feel fearless or powerless around fear because they are taught fear is something to fight or to obey by making you afraid of your parents or afraid of situations. So not everything to observe and work with. So for example, public speaking, performance anxiety, maybe going on a flight, anxiety about all sorts of different things, phobias about certain things. Maybe it's a learned behavior from a parent or somebody else or your friend when you were staying over, when you were younger. Maybe they saw a spider, they reacted, and suddenly you felt the same. You should be afraid. Superstitions that were brought up in families learning, like not walking under a ladder, say, for instance. Voodoo, depending on what people think about that in their family. Using swear words, curses, put on people. Breaking tradition is what we're all about. Breaking old habits and behaviors so that you feel powerful and strong. And you're letting those old fears go because it's now your new reality. Now back to Fiachra.
That's great. And when you take that sensation of fear and you actually look at it, when you observe it instead of actually fighting and being afraid of it, it loses its intensity. And it becomes a temporary sensation, not part of who you are. And this is something that we can do. Once you become aware of it, it changes everything. Because fear cannot exist when there's no meaning attached to it. When you have understanding, when you have filled those voids of uncertainty, then fear has no place. And with the assessment, with the analysis that our logical mind is meant to do, the understanding that comes from that realization that now either it is danger or it doesn't make sense, then the fear just passes very quickly. It's just deleted. But what's interesting is that it doesn't come back, because once you know that it wasn't real, you can't unknow that. And because now you get to understand, now you can get to apply those same principles to every other belief or limitation in your life. As we covered before, beliefs are only thoughts that we keep thinking. Those that hold us back are the beliefs that there is something dangerous, that there is something that we need to be afraid of, something that we're not able to understand. And our role in this clinic is to have all of our clients to change the relationship that they have had with those fears, so that they're no longer running away from it, but instead looking forward to what they can actually learn from it. This is what our natural logic is meant to be. It's what it's meant to do. It's what we're supposed to be doing. So that as adults, that we get to assess, we get to analyze, and we get to move beyond it. If there's something dangerous, well, then we can deal with that. But if something isn't dangerous, now we can respond appropriately. Now, regardless of all of those sensations and fears and dreads of the past, we can't change them. We can't in any way go back into the past, but we can learn from it if we want. And that becomes a choice. It's always a choice, because we have that choice to keep going back to relive and to repeat all of those past experiences without learning anything. Or we can look back and look at them and analyze them, assess them, and then realize, well, they were either dangerous or not. Because when we learn, we stop repeating. We change the relationship. And if you are fed up looping back around again and again and again, well, send us an email. Get back in touch with us and we'll guide you through those steps. Because the story that we attach to those sensations of fear, that's what gives fear its power. And it means that when we change the story, when we change the understanding, when we change the misinterpretation, now we change everything. Because even when children, either our own children or when we were children, when we were afraid, well, all we were told was a different story. We were given a different interpretation, a different way of learning and understanding it. And all it meant was that it had a better outcome. Had a better outcome just to unstick them from that sense of powerlessness, because that's all that fear gives. It is that sense of powerlessness, of helplessness. But the reality is you're not powerless. You're not helpless. Because, as I said before, you've survived everything in your life up to now, no matter what, no matter how tough your life has been, no matter what experiences you've had, you're still here. Because if fear had no story attached, what would be there? Well, it would just be a sensation. Be like a wave that would come. And as you know, waves just always pass. Okay, so is courage the absence of fear? Of course not. And as so many gurus, so many amazing people have said, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's facing it anyway. In spite of the fear of going ahead and doing it. Now, it's a hard way to do things. But it's when you have a purpose, when you can put a better story to the sensation, well, then it's even the fear itself becomes different. It's no longer fear. It can be, obviously, it can be concern. It can be something that is that well, it needs to be addressed. If something needs to be done, well, then we can get to do it. Because even confidence is not about not feeling these sensations. It's about not being controlled by them. As I covered before, confidence is not a state, it's not a feeling that you have to aspire to. Confidence is the absence of worrying about what other people think. Knowing that what you're doing is correct. That's what confidence is. And when you're acting, when you're living, knowing that what you're doing is, again, consistent with your values and your principles and your integrity, then the fear itself is gone. And there is no freezing, there is no paralysis. And wherever other feelings are there, they're no longer fear. Every other feeling now you can learn from. Now you can be better because of them. And sometimes the act of learning, of growing, of doing something new can create that sensation of fear. But again, it's not the fear. Because all that sensation is because of the void, the uncertainty, the not knowing. That's not fear. That's just not knowing. But when we look at it and we classify it as fear, now we're going to respond as if there is a real threat. And that's where the paralysis then comes in. But that's what I want you to be able to undo and to learn and understand, that once you look and you see that it's only the absence of knowing, that it gives you a chance then to reset it, to learn from it, and just let it go. Okay.
Does fear predict failure? Absolutely not. But fear can hold us back from learning new skills and fulfilling a dream that when we doubt ourselves because of fear, when we learn to be brave and courageous, there is a freedom and an excitement about learning unfamiliar or new skills, changing habits and behaviors to be a new self, and being afraid and doing things anyway, and feeling the thrill and pride of doing it and wanting to build on that and do more activities or tasks. Building blocks, taking small steps at a time. What happens when fear is allowed to be present? It completes its cycle and then we release it. Just like any biological response. Believing in yourself, trusting in yourself, going through the steps, helping yourself, allowing yourself, speak to us, come back and talk to us if there's any fears. Is fear permanent? Fear cannot remain without continued attention and assessment and analyze and provide learning and knowing more. And these learnings can be applied to the next time that the fear returns, because now the fear can collapse because of the new additions of confidence, of pride, of motivation, of enthusiasm, of energy, of independence, and all those things that you learn. So what is the difference between fear and danger? Well, danger is external and immediate. Fear activates our imaginations, our normal internal process of interpretation. Whether that is to apply logic so that it doesn't make sense, or it can create monsters or dragons based on the past experience that we've learned from and haven't replaced. So the idea is to look at the positives, the good things about the reading of the books, and change the emotional fears around monsters and the dark and anything else that has held us back. So what becomes possible when fear is no longer treated as a reality? Well, choice returns with learning and understanding. And the fear becomes less and less as logic replaces it. As we live the age we are rather than our old beliefs when we were younger. Does fear dictate our limits? No. Fear reacts to imagined limits. It does not create them, because if they did, they would have no goals, no creativity, or no learning. So we're learning all the time as we go through the program.
And thank you. And the great thing is, and hopefully from what we've been covering, what Katrina has been covering so far, that you're getting to even a different sense of, look, what's going on, what you can do, what difference you can make, even in your own life. Because the whole point of the discomfort that fear creates is it's almost like, again, your body letting you know, look, this is not you. It's not natural. And it's not natural because it doesn't make logical sense. So when we can get to look and analyze because of the discomfort, that the discomfort actually becomes a really good indication. It's a good, almost like kind of a flag to let you know, look, you can do something. And all it is about analyzing it, looking at it, and then once you see that it doesn't make sense, then with that understanding, the fear itself can diminish. It may not go straight away because we tend to hang on to in case. And that's okay, because once you act on it, once you then prove to yourself the next time that it becomes less and less, now it's easier just to release it and let it go. Because once fear is gone, it's replaced instantly with curiosity, learning, creativity, goals, passion, drive, enthusiasms. Because as humans, we have an inherent drive to explore and to learn. From the beginning of time. And this is why that we've gone from living in caves to living in the world that we have now. And even though we are destroying the planet, we can turn that around, but only if we have the will to do it. It becomes our choice. Okay, now we don't need to understand fear. Okay, we don't need to understand fear. But we can understand what the experience is and the choices that we have in how to respond to it. Because that in itself creates relief. And if you want, just take a few moments, just right now. Just to remember back to something that in the past used to create that sense of fear. But it's not there now. But just remember back to something, that thing that created that sense of fear. And just remember how it felt. Whether it was when you were young and you had a monster under the bed, or it was exams or a driving test, or the first date or an interview. Just going back to notice, just remember how it felt. And even as you think back on it now, just notice how different it feels now, looking back on it, now that it's gone. Because this is the relief. This is what that relief feels like. Almost nothing at all. It's almost like, yeah, I don't know how I thought that way, or how I thought that was a bad thing. So that whatever creates that same sense in the future And you know that it will pass because that's what they always do. Because in the future, you will look back again at it and you will feel that same relief, that as if it was just a non-event. And knowing that now you can include this understanding into your response, into your understanding, so that you can stop that feeling afraid and powerlessness, but only if you want to. I'm not saying this is going to be really easy for you. I'm just saying it is easy. But it's almost sometimes that we're afraid to let go our fear, paradoxically. That we almost depend on those fears, almost because they're part of our identity, part of how we see ourselves. But what if you were only to do that for an hour or a day? How different that would be. Because fear, you don't need to tackle fear. You don't need to fight it. You don't need to eliminate it before you can live your life the way you want to. Because once you understand it, it doesn't exist. Because when you get to see fear as a signal, not as anything else, well, then you can stop that paralysis. Now you can stop that freeze. And instead start living wisely, logically, living with purpose, with confidence. So what would that mean to you? What would it mean to you to be able to know that all those fears are not real? None of them are real. Anything that are real, then you look at and act then on the danger that they're showing you. Because in the absence of what we considered as fear, now you can be present in your life. Now you're capable, responsive, creative, unrestrained, innovative, and far more than you could ever imagine that you can be. Okay, now from what Katrina and I have gone through this evening, it's just to give you a new perspective, a new understanding. Can it be applied to everything? Absolutely. Because are there dangers in the world? Absolutely. Do you need to know about those dangers? Definitely. So that when you know the dangers, now you can act appropriately. Now you can deal with them appropriately. But if, on the other hand, there is no danger, if there's no need for you to be afraid, well, now you can just live normally, naturally, live to your highest ability. So over the next few minutes now, if any of you have any questions that you want to ask, please just unmute yourself and just shout out. Now, I know, again, for some people, they actually are afraid to speak. And that's okay. All right. Hopefully you don't need to, because we've answered all your questions, all those questions anyway beforehand, before they even became questions. But it's understanding as well that if you want to, the only person most of the time who's going to be judging you is you. And if other people are judging you, it's because they're judging you as, well, an amazing person, the best person that they know, the best friend or the best partner they know. And that's why even that fear can silence us, hold us back, prevent us from actually living the life that we deserve to live, the life that you're supposed to live. Because when you're living that life, well, now there's no regrets. So if there's no questions, I'll just go through just a quick process. Because all I want you to do now, whatever you're sitting, you don't need to relax doing this. This is going to be really quick. And all I want you to do now is just close your eyes. Now, because I can't see, I'll just assume that your eyes are closed. Because all I want you to do now is I want you just to get a sense, just pick one of those fears that are holding you back, whatever it may be. Pick the biggest one. Because all I want you to do, as you bring your attention to it, and you will feel the discomfort, that I want you to realize that discomfort is not a bad thing. It's letting you know that there's something that needs to be addressed. So now all I want you to do, if you can, I want you just, on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to measure that feeling. Just measure it. And the reason I want you to measure it is because by measuring it, you make it tangible. And remember, your mind needs something tangible so it can focus on and work with. Because now and it doesn't matter whether it's at 1 or 10, where just make it that 10 is the worst it could possibly be, and 1 where there's no feeling. So that you get to measure it now. And on that scale, now you can just open your eyes again. So that you can get the idea that when you're fighting, when you're struggling, when you're running away from it, this is why. It is uncomfortable. But it's not out to get you. It's there to let you know that there is something that you can address. So now I'm going to show you how you can address that. Because again, all I want you to do now, just closing your eyes. Just closing your eyes now, and again, just bringing up that fear. Now, instead of fighting with it, instead of being so aggressive with it and fearful of it as before, now I just want you to simply introduce yourself to it. Just say, hi, I'm looking forward to working with you for the next couple of minutes. That's all. Now, I know some people actually do say, well, I feel silly talking to my feeling. And you're right, it is silly. But no more silly than actually running away from a feeling that you have been doing for so long. So what I want you to do, just with your eyes closed, just introduce yourself to it, feeling it, and instead of fighting with it, instead of being afraid of it, just introduce yourself. Because by introducing yourself, you go from aggression and fear to just being decent, to being gentle, being yourself. So that by even introducing yourself now, well, like any introduction to a stranger, you're just meeting it as an equal. No preconceived ideas. Forget about all the other fighting and fear. Just feeling what it's like. That by just introducing yourself, and if you haven't already, go ahead and do that. Just use your name. Because as you introduce yourself, now the relationship changes. That maybe now it can help. Because even now, having introduced yourself, now I want you just to measure it again. Just to measure on that scale, how uncomfortable, how different, how not in fear, but in just how the physical sensation or how it's affecting you. Because for most people, for the majority of people, even that introduction will actually lower. Now, we're not looking for it to get to 0. But this is just an exercise, a very quick exercise, so that you can get to see how different, just by changing the relationship, how different you can feel. as I said, if there is any, if it hasn't actually changed, well then, hey, give us a ring. Send us an email and we will get back to you, and we will do this on a one-to-one basis, just over the phone even, so that you get to see how different it can feel. So now with your eyes open again, because I don't want you going off to sleep. Okay.
So I'm sure you enjoyed that experience. Some of you know Fiachra very well, and some of you know me very well. So we're delighted to see so many here tonight. And obviously we'll send out audios to other people who couldn't make it tonight. So past, present, future, you know, some people are very new and this is their first masterclass. So learn from it if you can. If there's anything you're not sure of, just get back. As Fiachra said, you have our numbers. That's what we're here for. And use the 6 months to really help you look at different areas of your lives, not just the area that you came to us for. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And we hope that you do get some insight from what we have said. Now, you will receive the recording within the next week, or you can ring us and ask us if it doesn't come for some reason. So you're going to receive an email in the next few minutes. And again, questions on it. Some of you, again, through fear, mightn't have wanted to speak, or, you know, whatever reason, no problem. Just fill out the questionnaire or ask us individually when you do speak to us soon. Our next masterclass, just repeat, is on Wednesday, the last Wednesday of next month, the 25th of February. So we look forward to seeing you then. Good night. Bye-bye.